the AllThingsXR podcast. Where you can get the best ARVR analyzers from the biggest names in the field. Hi everyone, welcome to the AllThingsXR podcast. I'm Mojtaba. In today's episode, we have a conversation with Matt Miesnieks, former CEO and co-founder of 60AI, which got acquired by Niantic earlier this year. Hi Matt.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks very much. Welcome to the AllThingsXR podcast. Everyone who is active in AR and VR field probably knows you already, but I wanted to start by asking if you can tell us more about yourself.
Sure. Like you mentioned, the most recent thing I did was started a company called 6D.ai. That was really a heavy computer vision and deep learning company, helping regular phones understand the world in 3D and sort of build the capability to crowdsource a 3D map of the whole world, which was going to be fundamental for AR going forward. But that was only the most recent sort of couple of years, but I've been working in AR for just over 10 years now. I had another company called Deco that failed. I spent some time at Samsung. I spent some time at a startup in Amsterdam called LiDAR, and then had a career in mobile software infrastructure before that. So lived all over the world, Europe, Asia, and now the last 10, 11 years in the US. So
Great. As you said, your journey in AR and VR is very interesting. Deco was very interesting also. I still remember the monkey. I myself started very early in AR market about just 9 years ago. Even before there were Android and iOS devices, I was developing AR experiences with Adobe Flash back then. But the challenges you were trying to solve those years were so much ahead of its time. I still can't believe that the monkey in Deco sample was aware of its surroundings and could interact with real-world objects in early iOS devices. And you even had decent SLAM in those times. How did you make those things work?
We were naive, I think. We just didn't think it would be as hard as it was. And we had some brilliant engineering talent on our team. So I think the thing we did right is we really correctly called the direction the technology was going to take, and the fact that the technology was necessary. So we were building the right things, and we were building them in the right way. And like you said, we built ARKit, using not just a SLAM system, but we built visual inertial odometry. We're the first people to do that, which was what ARKit and ARCore used. We built real-time 3D reconstruction, which was what 6D ended up using, and we figured out a lot of things around user experience and interactions and applications, and this need for a big multiplayer crowdsourced map of the world. We figured all that stuff out, and we're kind of right about everything. But the big lesson, the even bigger lesson, was that we were wrong about the timing, and the timing of when to build something, and the questions around how do you go to market. They're more important than the technology itself. Mm-hmm. So I've tried to get better at that, and 6D we did a reasonably good job, I think, of getting working on the right problem at the right time. And whatever I do next, it's kind of the single most important question I'm asking myself and thinking about.
Yeah, you mentioned 60AI. I think it is probably one of the most important AR companies of the decade. Can you tell us more about the initial idea behind it and the story behind it?
Yeah, well, it's the same idea we had at Layer and at Deco and at Samsung, which was that one of the big problems with AR is that content was kind of stuck to a marker or a QR code, or it didn't really, interact with the real world. And so that sense of presence, that illusion that this digital stuff is really here, always felt broken. And so, we knew that if you wanted, like a Pokemon to run behind your couch, the screen needs to be able to, turn off the pixels, for the Pokemon when it, is supposed to be behind the couch. And so in order for the system to do that, the system needs to know that there's a couch there, and it needs to know like the depth of that couch. Like, is the couch in front of the coffee table or behind it? And so we knew that this problem had to be solved, and the only way it was going to be solved was if regular phones could kind of figure out the depth and the 3D, objects that are in front of it.
Mm-hmm.
And we tried to solve that at Deco, and we sort of really started to understand that it was sort of possible, but also impossible at that time. And then I met Victor, my co-founder, who ran, one of the top, computer vision labs in the world at Oxford University, and he had an algorithm that solved that problem. And so we started working out how to work together and how to start a new company. And we sort of understood that if you're going to have persistence and the content like staying where it was, and if you're going to build a model of your couch, you're also going to need a model of, your dining table and your bedroom. And then if you go outside, you're going to need a model of the sidewalk. And, soon you realize, oh my God, we need a 3D model of the whole world, for everyone to be able to use AR. And you don't want everyone to be scanning the world fresh, like every time someone walks down the sidewalk. So this model became like a map, really, and it needed to live in the cloud, and it needed to have some, awareness, so an understanding of what objects were. And so that sort of idea was what 6D was built on. Like, what are these cloud capabilities that are needed to make AR work? And then, in a conversation with Ori Inbar from, AWE, he came up with this term, the ARCloud, to describe this idea. And so, out of that conversation, this concept of the ARCloud sort of came up and caught on. That was like perfect timing for that concept. And 6D really was the company that defined, what the ARCloud meant. And, we kind of, it was a very big vision, and excuse me. Yes. And we started to, work towards building that out. And the more we worked on it, demoed it, talked about it, we just saw all the major platforms, all the, Apple, Facebook, Google, all those companies start to recognize that they needed a version of this AR cloud if they were going to compete in AR. And so it was great. We were the leading, company in the space. And, when the time come that we thought, look, do we sell or do we keep going? All of them were interested in acquiring us. And Niantic, who made Pokemon Go, definitely not only made the best offer, but it was by far the most aligned, with what we were trying to do. So it was an easy decision at the end of the day.
Yeah, I totally agree. You mentioned ARCloud, Matt, which I think is one of the most important, if not the most important concepts in the field of AR. How do you see the current state of ARCloud?
Slow. It's. I mean, everything that we talked about right at the beginning of 2 years ago when Ori and I were kind of first evangelizing the idea, every single thing is still like it's working out exactly as we hoped. So it's not like we promoted this idea and then it turns out, oh no, you actually got to do it differently. But when we were going through the acquisition process, we obviously got a chance to get some insight into what all the companies are doing, because they wanted us to support their own ARCloud, work. And what was interesting to me is everyone, has teams of engineers just building, a 3D map of the world. Like tens of engineers, and they're throwing millions of dollars a year at it, already, and they're committed to it. But it takes time, and they're thinking about it at much bigger scale, because once you turn the ARCloud on for Snapchat or for Instagram or Google Maps, it instantly touches like 100 million people. So you can't sort of just push things out rapidly the way we could. And so from my point of view, watching it, I kind of wish I'd be seeing more progress. But I know for a fact that there's a lot of progress going on, under the hood where you can't see it.
Yeah, totally agree. I think the core challenge of ARCloud is the localization challenge. Whether you are at your own house or whether we talk about city scale AR clouds, what do you think is the best approach to solve this challenge? Because every company has its own way. Some use deep learning models, some use traditional computer vision, and some try to solve it by adding more sensors, like, for example, Apple putting LiDAR sensors in its devices. And some try to solve it with feature mappings, and some try to solve it with end-to-end deep learning solutions. What's your take on this?
So there's no one solution that's going to solve the problem. The real issue, I guess, is range.
Mm-hmm.
How far away is the thing you're trying to localize against? And by that I mean, if you're pointing your phone at you're sitting at a desk and pointing your phone at a QR code that's sitting on the table, the range between your phone and the QR code is, a couple of feet. And the QR code is something that's easy, that the phone remembers. So it's able to localize against that, instantly and
Mm-hmm.
very, very accurate. But the other extreme is just say, you're walking down a sidewalk or in a park, and you want to localize against, you hold your phone up, you want to localize, but the closest thing to you might be a building 100 yards away or a kilometer away. And localizing against that needs a completely different technique, just because the pixels are, by the time that building is captured on the pixels on your phone, it's much harder to actually recognize what it is. And so for short range stuff, or for things that are indoors, or the lighting is bad, things like a LiDAR sensor are incredibly helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're outside and you're pointing at stuff that's 10 meters away, like across the street, or 100 meters away, you have to rely on a pure optical system, maybe supported by GPS. So the ultimate solution, I think, is, and sometimes you've got network access, so you can pass data up to the cloud and localize in the cloud and give you a result back. Sometimes you just can do it real time with what's on the phone. So the ultimate solution is still some way off, and it's going to mean combining multiple ways of localizing into a single seamless user experience, and no one's got that solved yet. So today it's really a matter of really thinking about the specific use case and coming up with a way to localize that works for that use case. And if you want to do a different use case, you've got to use a different solution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Matt, when you compete in the fields that probably big tech giants like Apple, Facebook, and Google are working on, there's always the alarm that in one event, a company like Apple will introduce something that completely disrupts the technology you're working on. And I think the challenges that 60AI were trying to solve was of this kind. How did you cope with the stress that suddenly all you've been working on could be disrupted like that? For example, I remember you introduced human occlusion even before AR kits, right?
Yeah, we did. We showed that before anyone. I think the only way to, if you're working on something that's technically challenging, like a hard technical problem, you think this is an important problem, and Apple and Google and others are going to try and solve this one day. The only way to sort of come at it is to make sure that you've got people on your team that are better or as good as anyone that Apple can hire. And I knew that from my Deco experience. And so that was why the opportunity to work with Victor and Oxford meant that, look, we knew we were the state of the art, like not just, hey, we've solved the problem, but no, this is the absolute bleeding edge of what research and what is known to mankind. And so we always knew, look, Apple hasn't got anything better than this because nobody on earth has solved some of these problems, And startups could come along and make claims, and we'd look at their team and we'd go, they don't have a team to actually do this, And so that meant we were never surprised, really, what they were doing. Like we knew the human occlusion stuff was coming. We knew LiDAR was coming like 2 years earlier. Victor and I had deep, strong relationships into all those teams. And, you pick up gossip and you pick up things they won't talk about, and you figure, well, if they won't talk about it, then they're probably working on it. And you get a sense of, what's coming. And combined with our startup's ability to be very public, we were always showing off, what we were doing. And we were always, reminding those big companies that, hey, look, we're doing stuff that you don't know how to do and you can't do yet, and by the time you figure it out, we will have done the next thing. And so that was always, if we had stayed quiet or stealthy, that would have been a bad thing as well.
Great. So from all these giant companies, who do you think has the best chance?
The best chance of what?
The best chance to own the future of AR.
I think that it'll come down to like two types of winner. One will be whoever wins the device and the user interface for AR. I think Apple and Snap are really the only two companies that have got a chance there. And I think those two companies, because both of them really understand how to sell a fashion product, not just a technical product. I think the other piece to be won is kind of the back end, and that's the ARCloud and all that infrastructure that's connected. And I don't know really there who's. I think that everyone is building something pretty impressive. I think it could be anyone from Apple or Facebook. Microsoft has got all the pieces, but it's going to be a matter of who gets access to like everyone's camera. Like if you've got a camera running on a billion devices that's gathering data for the ARCloud, and your competitor doesn't, then you're probably going to win, even if your competitor's ARCloud technology is better. At today. It's a little bit. It's exactly like mapping today, like Google Maps and Apple Maps. You kind of need to get the data to make the map good, and if you're behind, the way Apple Maps was behind Google Maps, it's very, very expensive and a huge effort to try and catch up. So I don't know, maybe companies like Tesla and self-driving car companies will create maps that are used for AR. Niantic, obviously, we believe they've got the user base that's active and out there already, using AR applications that no one else has got. So yeah, I don't know. I definitely think. We sold to Niantic. We definitely think they've got an approach that's unique and some strengths that are unique that Facebook and Apple and Snap don't have, which is the engaged user base around their games and applications.
Yeah, I see. I see. Matt, you mentioned the autonomous vehicle industry, and one of the fields I recently think a lot about in my company and map a lot of our own works on is autonomous vehicle industry to map, for example, business models and strategies. Do you also see similarities between startups in these fields?
Um, Not really. I mean, in the sense that you're putting sensors out into the world and gathering 3D data, and that 3D data helps your product, work better. That is similar, but
Mm-hmm.
um, autonomous vehicles. If we think of cars and trucks and things, they only really go on public roads. Tesla is never going to get a map of my living room,
Yeah.
but they
Yeah.
might every street. Um, you've got other autonomous vehicles, whether it's drones or little robots and things that can map campuses like Disneyland or a factory or something, a university campus. Those are going to be interesting, like privately owned autonomous vehicles that can map private spaces. And then you've got, just the fact that consumers, you're going to be buying glasses that might be $200, $500 or something versus, buying a Tesla, which is
Yeah.
$70,000. So I think apart from some similarities in just the concept behind the software, everything else is pretty different.
Uh-huh. I see, I see. So Matt, as we discussed, AR and VR market is a very hard and challenging field. How do you think companies can adapt to the everyday changes and challenges of this market? I mean, startups working in AR and VR.
Yeah, so for startups, it is hard because I was chatting on Twitter the other day. It's AR and VR or XR is not a market; it's a technology.
Uh-huh.
So there's no such thing. When you say like the XR market, there is no such thing as an XR market. What you've got is a hardware market
Uh-huh.
that you're selling XR devices into a hardware market, or you've got an enterprise software market that you're selling, software that uses XR technology into that market. You've got a games market, that you are selling an XR game, into that market. So
Excuse me, you mean not yet, but as a whole?
no, it won't ever be a market. Like
I
XR
see.
is not a is it won't ever be a market. There'll be, um, there's a market for games,
Mm-hmm.
and so there's a subset of games that are targeted at, say, mobile phones. There's a subset of games that are like board games or console games.
Yeah, I see.
Um, so what there'll be is a market of games that are targeted at XR glasses or VR headsets or something. So I think that if you're a startup, you really need to firstly forget the idea of an XR market and think, no, I'm actually a games company or an enterprise software company or I'm a hardware company, and then you really need to think about your distribution. Like that's something that I think so many AR and XR VR companies think about after the fact. For instance, if you're building a VR product, a game or a game or any product, you are kind of dependent on pretty much the Quest and Facebook as your distribution partner.
Uh-huh.
And you need to think like, are they a good partner to work with? And plenty of companies have, been burnt, I guess, by Facebook over the years. So that's a real risk in building a VR until there's like alternative VR target platforms or alternative VR distribution channels. That's a risk in that. In AR, there are no headsets, apart from HoloLens
Yeah.
and stuff. And you've got to think, okay, well, my distribution for AR headsets is really like hundreds of units. I might sell thousands of my product, not millions of my product, my software product.
Mm-hmm.
Or you've got to build something completely different and target, phones or tablets. And So it's totally different. There isn't an XR market. It's really like, what am I, how am I going to distribute this product? What am I competing against? If I'm building a game that uses AR and I'm targeting iOS, I'm competing against Fortnite and Pokemon and Candy Crush and Clash of Clans and all those other games that are out there. And somehow my game, just because I can't say, oh, I'm the best AR game in the world. Like, no one cares. You've got to be the best game in the world.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. As I say, it's like trying to sail in a very stormy weather, and you have to sail your own ship, and also beware that there's the danger of big naval ships that can destroy you at any moment. That's
Yes,
yeah, it's very very
and they won't even
risky.
notice. They won't even notice that they've destroyed you.
Exactly, exactly. So, what do you think is the best strategy for high tech startups like yourself, like 6D right now?
Like deep tech, if you're doing deep tech in this space, there's still a lot of interesting problems that need to be solved. Um, but it's a very, like, the good news and the bad news. It's a very important, valuable prize for incredibly well-funded competitors. If you're trying to solve, I don't know, like 3D mesh segmentation in real time, Apple is also trying to solve that, and so is Facebook, and
Exactly.
they have world-class research teams working on it. So you've got to make sure that you can solve the problem in a better way than their research teams can, and then secondly, you've got to, again, like, really weigh up, what's the market I'm in, because if none of those companies will license your software, they'll build their own. So who is your customer, and what is your product at the end of the day? It's not going to be an SDK or an algorithm, because all those other companies will want to buy you rather than license you. So you've either got to then build your own app on top of the technology, or you've got to sell to one of those big guys. And so I think you can. I mean, like, we were very, very, very much had our eyes open at 6D as to that market dynamic. And when we got to the point of having to decide, do we build our own app or do we sell? We understood really what that maths meant, and we were able to look at the broader market and see how quickly that market was emerging and how long it was going to take and what the risks were in things taking that long. And for us, it just became a better risk return for our shareholders to sell, to sell at the beginning of this year, and that was before COVID. So
Yeah.
even then we were very, even like that. If the maths, like, had have worked out that way even before COVID, like, COVID would have been the nail in the coffin for that approach.
Oh,
So we're very fortunate that we made the right call at that time, and it was lucky, and it worked out great.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think COVID was somehow good news for VR, not location-based VR, but VR in general, and not so good news for AR, because in AR you need the physical world as an infrastructure for your content, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, like, Pokemon Go has had its biggest year ever. So it's really a matter of not thinking about it as AR, but thinking about it as it's a game. And how do we make this game work in the situation the world's in.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and there aren't any other successful AR products out there, apart from Pokemon Go. So maybe face filters, on Instagram and Snap,
Yeah.
and they've done exceptionally well, really, really well. So I think I would actually say that, the AR products that are in the market that are doing well have had really, really, really good years, like during COVID.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I see, I see. So, Matt, what do you think about the introduction of LiDAR in Apple devices? 60 was trying to solve these challenges using only RGB images, but suddenly many of those challenges are much easier to solve now with LiDAR.
Not many of those challenges. Only one of those challenges got easier with LiDAR. there's a whole pipeline of steps to get to a 3D mesh or 3D reconstruction of a scene. And the first step is generate a depth frame, like a frame of a single image with, depth in it.
Yeah.
And then, so you got to get those at whatever, 30 frames a second or 15 frames a second. LiDAR makes that step much, much easier. There's still, like I've seen, the work Niantic has done, and, with LiDAR, as part of that pipeline that 6D built and improved even further with some of the research Niantic had. And, you can see it if you you sort of enable the LiDAR or disable the LiDAR, and you can see the improvement, but it's not night and day. It's just better, but it's not like a huge improvement. The ability to run really fast and give a smooth UX, the ability to capture like really big spaces without running out of memory, the ability to stitch spaces together, to get the color right, all of those sorts of things are still, very much software problems that LiDAR doesn't help with.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that it does do is that it is a very big validation of, the vision that we built at 6D and around 3D sensing is fundamental to AR, AR to work. And Apple is, doing everything it can at the software and hardware side to kind of make that as high quality and as possible and as easy for developers as possible. So I think, I don't think it's like one of those, change the game for what 6D was doing. I think LiDAR just accelerated it and validated it.
Great. And also one of the challenges that we are still having in 2020 is the drift issue, which is always a pain.
Yep. LiDAR doesn't really necessarily help with that. I don't think.
Yeah.
As far as I know, Apple hasn't fused the depth data into its tracking system. That's still like a researchy type of thing that's been around for a while, and it doesn't help a ton. The improvements with drift are going to come when you get, better inertial sensors, and they've improved it so much since ARCloud was launched, and then relocalization and loop closure. And as those algorithms, there's still a lot of potential there. As those algorithms get faster and more accurate, what will happen is, drift will always be there to some degree. And so you'll work with inertial sensors and whatever to sort of minimize the drift. But it's every time you relocalize, it's kind of you reset the error back to zero, and then you drift a bit, and then you reset it back to zero with the localization. So I think we're going to see more and better localization, that eventually drift is not going to be a concern. I mean, and already now, like, you can walk 100 meters, just in a normal sort of scene, and your drift will be less than a meter, like probably even like centimeters, something like that. So it's almost irrelevant at the moment.
Yeah. So, Matt, there are rumors that Apple may start AR by entering a spatial audio. Even there are some rumors that Apple will introduce over-ear headphones with cameras and LiDARs on it. What's your take on that and on AR audio in general?
So obviously I've got no insight really into what Apple is doing. I've just sort of read public rumors, but I've definitely, at Samsung and others, we pushed around all these ideas. One of the biggest challenges, I guess, with wearable AR is that the glasses are so like fashion sensitive and also price sensitive. Like, everyone really has 2 or 3 pairs of glasses, sunglasses, reading glasses, whatever, sports glasses. And so you need to get them form factor fashionable, and you need to get the price right down to a few $100s. So what that kind of the problem that creates is like, oh, LiDAR is really, really helpful for AR, but how do you put a LiDAR sensor on a fashionable, cheap pair of glasses? And the answer today is you can't. And that if you do, the sensor itself is ugly, then you've got battery, you got to power it somehow with more weight for the battery, and heat then gets generated. And so, the idea of over-the-ear headphones as people are comfortable wearing those, like socially comfortable wearing those. They're kind of big already, and they've got, if they're wireless, they've got some battery in them already. So adding an RGB camera or a LiDAR sensor to that form factor is kind of a, neat way around getting it on your head without putting it in your glasses. If you've then got ultra wideband, as the between the headset and the glasses, you can get the position of the display relative to the camera, like really precise. So I think, wearing over the ear headphones could be a really good way to deliver a rich AR experience to glasses. And then there's the question of spatial audio, full stop, which I think has got a ton of value just from, beyond just better, conference calls and better like virtual events and things like that, where it helps a ton. But even outdoors, if you're wearing headphones around, like Foursquare put out a product recently called Mars Spot, MAR Spot, and that that was a really good proof case of, what if I had Siri in my ear, giving me relevant information as I'm there at the place, the right place, right time. That's a really, really interesting use case, and I encourage everyone to try out MarsBot and just to get that sense of where the future is going, because that 100%, that is going to be part of our day-to-day AR experience.
Yeah, exactly. So Matt, as we previously said, you sold 60AI to Niantic earlier this year. Can you tell us more about that, if it's not confidential, and how the process happened? It's an experience that not so many entrepreneurs will have. Can you tell us more about the process?
Sure. I mean, it's the first time I've gone through a real sale of a company, and I just learned so much. Like, there's just, and you're right. There's very little information out there as to how this really works, because you really only hear about two types of deal. Like, one is the super, super hot company. They get phone calls all the time. We'd like to buy you. We'd like to buy you. And then at some point, they just go, okay, we'll do a deal, and whatever, it's a $1 billion exit, and it gets the front page of the press. And those ones are, you're lucky if that happens to you. You're very, very lucky. The other ones are kind of acqui-hires, like, we're running out of money. We need, we'd like to sort of keep the team together. We'd like to sell the company. And what ends up happening is the acquirer just says, we could use like, you've got 10 people. We could use 5 of those. We'll give you like a tiny bit of money, like maybe the amount that you've raised, and what happens is the investors get, some money back, and about half the team, gets a job. None of the founders, no one really gets anything, financially out of the sale. And then the company gets to do a press release saying, Facebook acquires blah, 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 and it looks like you got an exit, but really it's which is still better than shutting the company down. I don't want to, sound like it's a negative thing. It's still much better than shutting the company down, and your investors will, have full respect for you to pull it off and to go through that process. But it's always the ones that are in between that there's no no one really talks about that, and we were that. We were a modest exit. We returned, multiple of our investors got a multiple back of their money. Everyone, all the common stockholders, the founders and employees, got money for their stock. So everyone got a win out of it, and the process it really came down to only one thing that matters, is that you need multiple offers for your company. Mm-hmm. Even if you're asking for those offers, chasing those offers yourself, which we did. We'd built relationships like right from the beginning with everybody, Niantic, Apple, Google, Facebook, Snap, anyone, Microsoft, even to a degree. So they all knew who we were. They knew what we did. They knew our technology. And so when sort of the time came that we were like, yeah, let's, it was kind of a conversation with one of those companies just in passing, like, have you ever thought about, seriously about being a part of us and us acquiring you? And I said, I think we'd be open to that. Let's see where that goes. And so that conversation kind of led over months. It took months to get a offer from that buyer, and it wasn't a good offer, but it was real. And in parallel, we were working like mad to get, investment offers from venture capital. We were working like mad to get, revenue generating deals from customers so that we could bootstrap if we needed to, as well as other acquirers, and just saying, look, we know you've told us you've been interested. We are going to sell. Like, we're going to take this, we said we're going to take this deal if no one else gives us a better deal. And that kind of forced these other companies to either, back away, which some did, or come up with an offer, which some did. And so it was when we had those multiple offers that we were really able to sort of just say, look, what's the best? What's the situation here? And if we didn't have multiple offers, we would have ended up as an acqui-hire. And it was, or we would have just, bootstrapped, and with COVID, it would have been ugly. So, the only advice I can give, and this is, it's much easier to say than it was to do. And you've got to start, if you want to sell now, you can't start now. You should have started 12 months ago. Uh-huh. But you need to have multiple companies that are aware of you, and you need to know which ones are interested, like, all the time, because it's still going to be very difficult to get, those offers, across the line.
I see. Thanks very much. Those were very valuable information for tech entrepreneurs. So, Matt, are there any startups in AR and VR that you are excited about right now?
It's tough right now. There's a startup I made an angel investment in recently, like a very small angel investment, mostly because I like them and I want to work with them and help them succeed. They haven't announced that yet, but they're not really AR. They're closer to Pokemon than they are to Magic Leap or something like that. Uh-huh. So I definitely think what they're doing is a smart way of timing what the market can support. I'm seeing a handful of very focused enterprise companies that are solving problems around property, whether that's renovations or insurance or construction, like those sort of things. Just really, but they're almost more computer vision than AR. And so again, they're not really AR, but they're using a lot of that 3D computer vision to solve a B2B problem. And then the other company I do like is Fable. Edward Sachi's company, and they just launched Lucy, part of Wolves in the World, and Lucy's like an AI-driven friend, like a virtual person that you can actually have conversations with and interact with. And I think that space is just fascinating, and it's going to be huge at some point. It's kind of hard to know the timing and what the tipping point is going to be, but Fable is at the forefront of figuring that out. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great. So, Matt, as of our last question, how do you envision the future of AR and VR?
Patiently is probably the best way. It's going to take a long time. We all, whatever, just say take Apple's entry into the headset market, when that happens. Um, Back when we were starting 6D around 2018, we're talking like with the AWE, with Ori and Tom and Super Ventures guys about when are we going to see, Apple enter the market. And, they were more optimistic than I was. And I said, look, 5 years, it's going to be like 2022, 23.
Uh-huh.
And, that looks like about right, as to when they will do something. And then I reminded them, I said, look, that's going to be version 1 of Apple's glasses. Like, most people don't remember version 1 of the iPhone. Or they kind of remember that there was a big launch and that was a big deal, but it only sold a couple of 100,000 units. Maybe got to 1 million. I'm not sure, but that's less than the Oculus Quest sold.
Mm-hmm.
It was not a consumer success. It impressed all the industry insiders, but it wasn't until the iPhone 4. It was like the iPhone, then the 3G, the 3GS, and then the 4. So that was 3 years later that the iPhone 4 was launched, and then the year after that was when sales really took off. And it was the same with the Apple Watch. It wasn't until the third or fourth generation of the watch that they kind of took off and overtook the Swiss watch industry and all that sort of thing. So whatever Apple launches as their headset product, it's going to probably be another 3 years before we get the one that millions and millions of people buy. And if you're a startup, you can build your app on top of those glasses and reach millions and millions of people. So for me, if you're a startup and you're hoping to succeed on the back of Apple's AR glasses, I would find something else to do for the next 5 years.
Uh-huh.
And target phones or build, expensive enterprise products that can, target HoloLens or something like that. Or trust Facebook, and target Quest. But yeah, I think that, patience is what's going to be needed before there's a big market. But on the flip side, it's happening. It's going to happen. And I haven't, in the last 10 years, I haven't seen a single concern. I mean, there has been concerns that, it's physics and the speed of light and the laws of nature, mean that see-through AR glasses are impossible, But I mean, just last week, I was speaking to someone who had some visibility into Microsoft and Apple's hardware roadmap, and both of those companies are still on track to have consumer see-through displays, working in 2 years' time. So that's encouraging. The laws of physics seem to be, giving up or conceding to engineers.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Matt, it was an honor to have you on the All Things XR podcast. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great questions. I enjoyed it.